The thatched roof crackles above your head. Morning air pushes through its straw seams in tiny invisible threads, cool, damp, and faintly scented with the smoke of last night's hearth. The first light slips through the shutter cracks like careful fingers resting against the floorboards, pale and diffused. You're already awake. Not suddenly, not with alarm, but with the slow realization that you are once again not asleep. Your back is flat on the straw mattress, its lumps rearranged in familiar discomfort. Your feet, still wrapped in wool strips, twitch beneath the linen blanket. And your ear, your left one, it itches. Not a sharp itch, just that slow, creeping sensation as if something dry and invisible had wandered too deep, just out of reach. You don't move yet. You simply lie there, eyes half-lidded, listening. The sounds begin as they always do first. The quiet coo of a wood pigeon nesting in the beam above you, then the distant clip of hooves in mud. A woman calls to her child from somewhere down the lane. Someone coughs once loudly, then spits. You reach a hand lazily to your ear. Your fingers come away dry. You scratch gently at the outside curve, then pause, wondering not for the first time if that tickling sensation goes deeper than fingers can follow. This is not new. This is medieval life, where dust floats from ceilings and smoke clings to everything, even your thoughts. Where bedding is shared with hay mites, and the air in your cottage is only half yours. Where ears are not forgotten, no, far from it. They are watched, talked about, cleaned, in ways you are just beginning to understand. You sit up slowly, brushing straw from your tunic. The hearth is low embers wrapped in ash. A clay pitcher of water waits near the door beside the bowl you use for everything washing, drinking, soaking beans. You fill the bowl carefully, watching the ripples settle. The water is brownish, caught from the rain barrel last night. Still, it's enough. You dip a cloth in and squeeze it over your head, letting a thin line trail down the back of your neck. You feel the chill slide over your spine, but it's not the cold that gets your attention. It's the whisper in your ear, a soft hiss like something shifting within. You frown, not pain, not yet, just the sense that something is there. You remember what old Mistress Eldgith once said. When your ear talks to you, best listen before it starts screaming. You rise dressed quickly and open the cottage door. The lane outside is misting over with a soft drizzle. Chickens scratch the earth without complaint. Farther down, a boy chases a goose into a cartwheel rut. The village is waking but slowly. You make your way toward the healer's hut. Not quickly. There's no panic, just that quiet, persistent itch. Mistress Elgith lives at the edge of the village, in a house tilted slightly to the left, as though it's always listening. Herbs hang in bundles from every beam, rosemary, yarrow, marjoram, drying like curled green paper. The door is always open. She is sitting on a stool by the fire, plucking thorns from a bramble vine with tweezers made from sheep bone. She doesn't look up when you arrive. "You've got an ear tickle," she says, as if it's a fact about the weather. You hesitate at the threshold. She gestures without looking. In then. Sit near the hearth. You do. She turns and eyes you fully. Might be wax, might be wind, might be smoke, might be something crawled in. Your expression stiffens. She snorts. Don't panic. Could be worse. Could be both wind and wax. She moves slowly toward a shelf filled with bottles. Each bottle is different. Some short and corked, others stoppered with beeswax and string. She selects one with a cloudy liquid and holds it to the firelight. Goose fat, she says, with crushed marigold and a hint of elderflower. You blink. She shrugs, good for drawing things out, gentle, no sting. She dips a length of linen cord into the jar. It's thickly woven, coarser than thread, but thinner than cloth. When she pulls it out, it drips like softened butter. Hold still. You do. She twists the cord into a narrow taper and presses the soaked tip gently against your ear canal. Not deep, just enough to settle in the outer chamber. It's warm, sticky, smells faintly like tea and rot. Sit still, she murmurs. She places a wool shawl over your shoulders. You close your eyes. You sit in silence while the heat works its way in. The hearth crackles. The rain ticks against the wattle walls. Your breathing slows. And then a pop. Not loud. More like a bubble releasing. You open your eyes. Mistress Eldgith gently removes the linen wick. She inspects it, nods, then shows you something clinging to the tip, a flaky yellow crumble like old wax gone brittle. There she says, better out than in. You feel it instantly, a strange clarity. Your ear no longer hums with background pressure. Sounds sharpen the hearth, sounds closer the rain more pointed. You hear the wheeze in Eldgith's breath, the creak of her stool beneath her. She smiles at your face. Feels like being reborn in half your head, doesn't it? You nod, because it does. She gives you a second cord, this one tied in twine. For next time, don't wait too long. You leave her hut slowly, the drizzle soft against your face. And the world, half of it at least, feels newly open. More air, more space, more sound. Your right ear, still untouched, now feels muffled by comparison. But that's a problem for another day. Today you walk with one clean ear, and the quiet joy of having truly heard rain for the first time in weeks. You spend the day with only one ear fully awake. It's disorienting, like walking with a boot on one foot and bare skin on the other. Sounds come differently, crooked sideways, as if voices now favor one shoulder over the other. You hear the bark of dogs from farther away, the splash of water as a cart rolls past. Even the cough of old Cedric behind his shuttered window sounds like it's closer, clearer, though he hasn't left his bed in weeks. It's not uncomfortable, just peculiar. Your left ear's open, but your right sulks in muffled silence as though jealous of the treatment. You try not to poke it with your finger, but of course you do, just once. And the itch returns like a scolding. By dusk, you've made up your mind. You'll do the other one, but not the same way. You want to learn, not just sit like a goose waiting to be plucked. You want to see how it's done. The village healer told you once that she learned her methods from a woman even older than she who now lived in the woods, half a day's walk away. No one calls her a witch, not aloud, but they don't call her often, only when they're desperate or curious. You are the second. You wake before the birds. Pack a heel of bread, some cheese wrapped in linen, and a dried apple. And then you walk. Over frost-crusted paths, past mossy stones, and through a gap in the hedge, where the brambles grow in thick knots. The sun hasn't cleared the hills when you arrive. Her hut is built of turf and logs, slanted, partially sunken into the earth like it wanted to go underground, but gave up halfway. Thin trails of smoke rise from the thatch. You hesitate, then knock. Once, twice, 3 times. The door creaks open on its own, and you are greeted by the smell of old herbs and damp wool. She is seated on the floor, cross-legged, surrounded by jars, baskets, feathers, hollow bones, and something that looks like a fox's skull. She does not look up. You came with the one ear, she says flatly. You blink. She sniffs. It's always the left first. Smoke rises leftward from the hearth. Dust sleeps in the right. You nod. She gestures toward a low stool made from a tree stump. You sit. She begins to hum, a low, vibrating hum that settles not in your ears, but in your ribs. Then she moves, quickly, fluidly, grabs a goose feather from a tall jar, dips it into a dark green oil that smells like nettle and onion, holds it up to your face. This is not for poking, she says. She taps her own temple. This is for drawing. Drawing what you wonder. But you don't ask. She slides the feather soft and first around the rim of your right ear. Not in, just around, tracing its ridges, looping the edge. She switches to the quill tip now coated in oil and rests it gently just inside. She hums again. You feel the sound behind your eyes. Then she stops, holds up a small horn. Not a loud one, a hollow one, carved from sheep's bone polished to ivory smoothness. She presses the narrow end toward your ear canal and gently breathes into the wide mouth. Not a puff, a stream, warm, steady. The scent of herbs follows. You feel it swirl, not inside your ear exactly, but in the air just before it. The hum resumes. She places one hand on your shoulder and continues the sound. Vibrating through her bones into yours, the horn breathes. Your ear listens, and something shifts. A warmth, then a tingle, then pop, and a trickle. Oil runs from your ear in a thin stream. You blink. The sound around you doubles. Again, everything becomes closer, sharper. Even her hum sounds different now. Louder. Less from outside, more from within. She pulls the horn away and sets it in a clay bowl. Wipes your ear with linen. Smiles faintly as if remembering something. You are listening now, she says. And in that moment, you believe her. She walks to a shelf and selects a pouch. Hands it to you. Inside are dried petals, elderflower chamomile rose hips, and a sliver of hollow reed. You can do it yourself next time, she says. But you must hum. You nod. She watches you stand, adjust your cloak, and prepare to leave. As you reach the door, she calls softly. Most folk clean their ears to hear the world. She pauses. You should listen to yourself too while you're in there. You walk back through the woods in silence, but your ears are busy. They catch everything now. The crackle of twigs underfoot, the buzz of a beetle near your collar, the sound of your own breath, sharp, shallow, then deep. By the time the village comes into view, you realize something else. You're not just hearing better. You're feeling it too. Like sound is a pressure that presses softly against the bones behind your face. You walk taller, straighter, like someone finally unknotted a rope behind your eyes. And as the sun sets behind the cottages, you smile, because the itch is gone, but something else remains. A quiet invitation to notice more, to hum, to draw out what's been hiding, even if it's just wax. The sun warms your shoulders as you cross the square. You pass a boy balancing firewood, a woman ladling thin broth from a pot, and two men mending a broken cartwheel while arguing about geese. The village feels louder than it did yesterday, but that's not because anyone is shouting. It's because you hear everything now. The tiny slap of wind against shutters, the creak of the well rope. Even the far-off clatter of the blacksmith's hammer feels crisp, like it's striking stone inside your ear. And for the first time in many days, you want to be among people not because of need or duty, but because of sound. You want to listen, to hear, to soak. So you walk toward the place where sound and warmth gather, the bathhouse. The village bathhouse isn't large. It's not a Roman monument with tiled floors and heated walls. No, this one is simpler, timbered with rough-daubed walls that leak a little steam and gossip alike. The roofline tilts slightly like a smile frozen in timber, but inside it's a different world. You step into the front room where boots are left in straw-lined bins and cloaks hang limp with damp. A heavy smell lingers herbs, ash bodies, soapwort, and sweat. The heat reaches your face first, then your chest, then your limbs, like someone wrapping you gently in a blanket made of water. You pay a coin. The bathmaster grunts and waves you through the inner door. You undress slowly, folding your tunic onto a bench carved with initials. Behind you, others do the same. A hunched old man with a walking stick, a woman humming quietly to herself as she scrubs her forearm with bristled straw. You hold your breath, then step into the steam. The room opens around you like a warm breath. Stone tubs and wooden barrels filled with water, some hot, some cold. Steam rises in lazy tendrils. Men and women sit or soak, some chatting, others silent. No one hides, everyone is part of it. You settle near a low tub of warm water and ease your legs in. The heat seeps into your bones, your ears tingle. Across from you, a woman in a lavender shift is combing her hair with a carved horn comb. She has long finger sharp knuckles and a voice that moves like wine when she speaks. Your ears are bright, she says, eyeing you. You blink. She nods knowingly. Cleaned recently. You nod again. She smiles, always nice when someone does it properly. She sets down her comb and reaches into a basket beside her. From it, she draws a linen cloth, a vial of oil, and a narrow wooden spoon carved with tiny notches. Want help with the outside? You hesitate. She shrugs, nothing shameful. Everyone needs ears, and everyone needs ears cleaned. You nod. She comes beside you, dips the spoon in the oil, and gently drizzles a line just behind your ear, right where it meets your jaw. The oil is warm, scented with rosemary and a trace of mint. She uses the cloth to wipe softly behind your lobe, folding it so the weave touches every crease and fold of flesh. It's not just cleaning, it's attention. And it feels like no one's looked at your ear that closely in your life. Around you, others do the same. A father wipes his toddler's ears while the child tries to splash him with soapy water. A bent-backed woman scrapes wax gently from her own ear, using the tip of a lavender stalk. Someone in the corner is boiling dried thyme in a pot, the vapor meant to loosen whatever lingers too deep to reach. It's communal, intimate, ordinary. No one makes jokes. No one gawks. Because this is the medieval bathhouse where dirt, pain, laughter, and care are all washed in the same basin. The woman finishes and pats your shoulder. You'll sleep better, she says. You believe her, not just because your ear feels smoother, cooler, lighter, but because of what you see in her eyes, certainty born of practice. She hands you the spoon. Next time, do it yourself. You tuck it into your cloak as if it were gold. You soak a little longer, not for cleanliness, for the heat, the hush, the sound of water pattering against bare skin. Then you rise dry off with a rough cloth and redress slowly. You leave the bathhouse with oil still clinging faintly to your neck. And as the wind catches your cloak outside, you hear it whistle behind your ear. It sounds like wind through a pine branch, clear and sharp and kind. The monastery smells like ink. Not just old ink, fresh ink, sharp and metallic, mixed with warm beeswax and the faint bitterness of scraped parchment. You stand quietly in the scriptorium surrounded by silence thicker than wool. Only the slow scratch of quills breaks the air. Rows of monks in brown and gray robes bow over their desks, copying texts under narrow arched windows. Candles flicker near their elbows, their flames reflected in the wet strokes of freshly written Latin. And somewhere beneath all that silence, someone is humming softly. At the far end of the room, you follow the sound, not with your eyes, but with your ears. You are not here to scribe. You cannot read Latin. You cannot even write your name. But you carry buckets of water for their ink. You scrape candle wax. You sweep ashes and sand from the floor. You are a helper, a quiet one. But today you are here for something else. You've heard whispers that monks have their own way of cleaning ears. They do it between psalms, not as a vanity, but as a kind of devotion. Because what enters the ear, whether noise or wisdom, should meet a clean path. So they say. Brother Hildebrand is the oldest among them. He walks with a cane carved from olive wood and speaks in fragments like sentences that forgot their endings. But his ears, those knotted old things, are clear pink and slightly shining. He is the one who hums. He sits at a desk without parchment, just a small cloth bundle beside a bronze bowl. You hover nearby. He notices. He doesn't speak, only gestures for you to sit. You do. He opens the cloth. Inside a folded square of raw cotton, a long sliver of smooth ashwood, and a vial no bigger than your thumb. He lifts it and uncorks the lid. Chamomile and sheep's milk, a strange mixture. He soaks the cotton and winds it into a soft curl like the inside of a snail shell. Then he takes the ash stick. Not for the canal, he whispers finally. Just the shell, always the shell. He begins to trace. Slowly, delicately. He doesn't dig. He draws. Around the outside rim of your ear. Behind the lobe. Into the shallow basin where whispers hide. The cotton is warm. The scent is sweet. And for a while you forget to think. The others in the room never look up. They keep scribing. The sound of quills resumes scritch, scritch, pause, breathe, scritch again. But Brother Hildebrand is elsewhere. Focused. Present. A liturgy not of words but of care. He unwinds the cotton. Examines it. Nods. No words of praise. Just acceptance. He hands you the bowl and gestures to the corner of the room. You go. You empty the water. Rinse the cloth. Return the cotton to the fire. The ritual is complete. Later, he tells you that monks believe sin can enter through the ears. That gossip is poison. That temptation, too, has a sound. And so he says we cleanse, not to hear better, but to listen more wisely. That night, you lie on your cot in the tiny side room where helpers sleep, and you notice something strange. Even in silence, your ears feel full, not with wax, but with memory. Of quills, of cotton, of the old monk's breath as he whispered only the shell. You understand now why the monks clean their ears. It's not just for health, it's for discipline, for clarity, for peace. And as you drift into sleep, you find yourself humming quietly, reverently. Not a song, just a single note. Long and low, as though tuning the world before it enters you again. The barber surgeon's shop is never quiet. It clinks, it drips, it chatters. You stand in the doorway staring at the bundles of metal that dangle from wooden pegs like wind chimes for the mad. Hooks, spoons, blades, and things whose names you'd rather not know. The floor smells like iron and boiled vinegar. A stool sits in the middle of the room, stained dark with old business. And somewhere behind a thick curtain of drying leeches, a man clears his throat. Come to lose a tooth or find a remedy, he asks. You hesitate. I've a trouble in my ear. The leeches jiggle as he steps through them. He's younger than expected. Not gray, not hunched, but his eyes are older than his face. Tired, sharp, already judging the state of your skull before you say another word. Earache, he asks. Sort of. He nods. Muffled, pressured, whistling, popping, fluttering, itching hot. You pause, mostly itching, sometimes like it's stuffed. He gestures to the stool. Let's see then. You sit. He wraps a long, thin cloth around your shoulder like a bib and retrieves a copper probe the length of your palm. The sight of it makes your knees stiffen. Don't blink, he says, and don't flinch. He leans close, too close. You smell juniper on his breath. He peers into your right ear. Whistles. Wax, he says, plenty of it. You exhale. He doesn't. Excessive wax indicates a warm liver and sluggish blood, could lead to heaviness of thought or melancholy, possibly early madness. You blink. I feel fine. He's already pouring something into a dish. It's the beginning that feels fine, he mutters. He mixes crushed sage with vinegar and a pinch of powdered ox gall. The result smells like burned salad. He soaks a linen tuft and gently presses it into your outer ear. You feel the tingle first, then the sting, then the deep invasive burn that makes your toes curl. It clears the humors, he says, as if your eyes aren't watering, balances the bile. You cough. He fans your face with a rag and hums something tuneless. Then the leeches arrive. You notice them only when one drops into a shallow bowl with a wet plop. He picks it up with a carved bone wand and presses it firmly behind your ear, just below the skull at the base of your neck. You yelp. He clicks his tongue. It's not for punishment, he scolds. The creature feeds on what your liver cannot purge. You resist the urge to run. Too late now. The leech latches on. A slow, warm pulse begins beneath your skin. He sits beside you, arms folded, watching as if admiring his own painting. After 10 minutes, he removes it, its belly full and glistening. He deposits it gently in a jar marked used. Then he cleans the wound with vinegar and rose water. Better now, he asks. You hesitate. Oddly, yes. The itch is quieter. The ache has dulled. But your pride feels freshly bruised. Before you leave, he offers a parchment scrap with a hand-drawn diagram. The four humors the liver's connection to the ears, and some barely legible warnings about damp weather and green vegetables. He also sells you a dried toadstone to hang around your neck, just in case the earache is due to unseen spirits. You thank him and pay, not because you believe, but because you're no longer entirely sure what you don't believe. That night you sit by the hearth, one ear bandaged, one still humming with faint echo. You remember the hiss of vinegar, the soft tug of the leech, the scratch of quill on parchment, and the truth that you now know for certain. In the medieval world, people cleaned ears, not just with water and cloth, but with theories, with superstition, with balance and blood and bile and fear. And somewhere in all of that, maybe, just maybe, a little clarity too. The fair arrives with the dawn. You smell it before you see it, wood smoke roasting meat, beeswax candles, wet earth churned by carts, the scent of new things, strange things, impossible things. By midday, the village green is unrecognizable. Tents bloom like mushrooms across the grass, striped in red, saffron, and indigo. People shout above the music of fiddles and flutes. Sheep bleat. Coins jingle. Somewhere a small boy shrieks with delight as a puppet bites a cabbage in half. And you're looking for something very specific. The ear doctor. Not a real doctor. Of course not. The man calls himself Master Honorius the Waxwright. His tent is blue decorated with painted ears, long, short, hairy elf-like, some with earrings, one with a mouse climbing inside. A wooden placard swings above the entrance, cleansing the mind by way of the ear on the 1329. You duck inside. The interior smells like burned sage and wine left out too long. Jars line every shelf, wax, plugs brown and yellow and hard as horn. Dried herbs dangle from the ceiling. Tools glint on a red cloth pewter syringes. Small wooden cups, a roll of soft leather, lined with copper spoons and spiral scrapers. Master Honorius himself wears a cloak stitched with golden thread in the shape of ears. He turns and bows low, a seeker of clarity. You blink! He gestures dramatically to a padded stool, one ear or both. You sit. He beams. From a velvet pouch, he removes what looks like a funnel made of horn. He calls it the Otosyrinx, design of my own, he says proudly. Combines the wisdom of Galen, the caution of Avicenna, and the wine of Gascony. He fills the funnel with warm wine, then tilts your head and inserts the narrow end into your ear. You flinch. He hums. This will not hurt unless you deserve it. You're not sure if that's a joke. The wine trickles in slowly. It's warm, almost pleasant. It pools against the wax deep inside and loosens something with a faint click. He waits, then tilts your head over a bowl and presses gently behind your ear. The wine comes out slightly darker, tinged with a crumb of wax the size of a lentil. He holds it up with tweezers like a jewel. Behold the curse of confusion. The audience claps. You realize others have gathered in the tent while he worked. A man with a chicken under his arm nods solemnly. A woman holding a crying child whispers, "It's true, I feel lighter just watching." For the second ear, he uses a different tool, a tiny metal plunger tipped with down feathers. He calls it the whisper spoon. You suspect he names these things himself. Still, when he strokes the feathers along your canal, your eyes flutter closed. The itch vanishes. The echo disappears. And when he's done, you feel taller, like someone opened a tiny door in your head and let the wind out. He sells you a vial of cleansing wine mixed with sage and wintergreen for emergencies of the ear and soul. You buy it. He winks. Remember, he says, as you leave when the ears are clogged, so is the path to God. You aren't sure what that means, but you hear the birds clearer now, and the distant creak of a windmill on the next hill, and the delighted squeal of a pig finding something sticky. You wander the fair with clean ears and open eyes. You buy a meat pie, eat it too fast, and let the steam hit your newly awakened hearing with a soft shh. You sit by the fire juggler for an hour and swear you hear the flames whispering. And when night falls and you lie in your bedroll beneath the stars, you smile. Because sound now feels like water. It surrounds you. It carries you. And you understand that medieval folk, even with pewter syringes and wine-soaked feathers, knew a truth modern folk might forget. That clarity isn't just for the eyes. It's for the ears, too. And sometimes it arrives on a cart pulled by mules and dressed in velvet. The manor rises like a shadow from the mist. Stone walls tangled with ivy slate roof, glistening with dew windows like watching eyes. It looms above the fields, removed from the hum of common life. The kind of place where voices are always lowered and candles never fully extinguished. You've been sent to help in the servants' hall just for the week, peeling apples, folding linens, sweeping corridors that always seem to gather dust, no matter how often you sweep them. But on the third morning, as the rooster crows, and the kitchen fills with steam, and the smell of barley bread, the housekeeper calls your name. Upstairs, she says, handing you a fresh basin of warm water. The lady wants her ear kit. You climb the staircase slowly, 2 steps behind a scullery maid named Ellen, who walks like she's afraid of the floor creaking. She whispers Lady Margaret's ears get done every 5th day, like clockwork. She says it keeps her headaches away and her secrets clearer. You blink. Ellen snickers. Don't ask me, I just fetched the basin. Lady Margaret is already seated in her chamber. A room of tapestries and perfume where nothing looks touched, but everything smells like flowers and firewood. She wears a sapphire robe trimmed with ermine. Her hair is braided back tightly, and her ears, they are bare exposed unadorned. She does not turn when you enter. She simply gestures. To the stool, to the small ivory box resting on her dressing table. You carry the basin forward and wait. The box is carved with roses. Inside it, a swan feather puff, a sliver of beeswax wrapped in linen, a narrow silver spoon, and a tiny phial labeled in perfect script, distillate of rose and vinegar for auricular clarity. She lifts the bottle herself, tips a drop onto the puff, tilts her head to one side and neck elongated like a swan. Begin. You hesitate. Then softly press the puff behind her ear, dabbing gently in small circles. She does not flinch. She watches you in the mirror. Behind the ridge, she says, most forget that. You comply. She closes her eyes and exhales. Next, the beeswax. It is faintly scented with lemon balm. You rub it between your fingers until it softens. Then trace it just inside the outer rim of her ear. The wax does not clean its seals. It guards against wind, against draught, against whispers she had rather not hear. So she says, the spoon is last, delicate, curved like a crescent moon. You dip it in the rosewater and gently trace the inside of the concha, the hollow cup of her ear. Slowly, she says, like writing a secret. You do, and with every movement you feel something ceremonial begin to form, not just hygiene, but ritual. This is not cleaning. This is control. Lady Margaret does not tolerate disarray in her linens, her halls, or her ears. When you finish, she opens her eyes, smiles faintly. You may leave the box open, she says. My sister arrives tomorrow. She always forgets hers. As you turn to go, she adds almost casually, the ear is not just for hearing, you know. It's for remembering. If you keep it clean, you can hold things longer. You say nothing. But the words echo long after you've left her chamber. Later in the servants' quarters, Ellen asks what happened. You simply say, she keeps her ears like she keeps her secrets. Ellen raises a brow, then nods, and goes back to peeling onions. That night you lie in your cot by the hearth. Your own ears feel dull in comparison, ungroomed, unpolished, unremarkable. But you wonder what might you remember better if you traced your thoughts as gently as a silver spoon in rosewater. What might you hear if your ears weren't always full of ash and noise? You sleep before the answer arrives. But the question lingers. The village of Cragstow is not on any map. It sits between a broken ridge and a forest that smells like old bread and mushrooms. No stone walls, no market square, just 6 thatched cottages, a crooked chapel, and the ever-present sound of wind moving through trees that no one ever names. You arrive on foot following a man with a basket of turnips, who swore someone here knew the proper way to rid ears of curses. Not wax, not fever, but curses. He didn't elaborate. He just pointed, smiled thinly, and walked on without another word. The house you're looking for stands alone at the far end of a goat path. It's made of cob and bark and smells like pine resin and something slightly burned. You knock. A woman answers. Tall, hunched eyes, the color of bruised sage leaves. Her name is Mother Heg. No one calls her that to her face. They don't call her anything. They just show up like you did with some itch, some burden, some weight in the head. They can't name. She lets you in without speaking. You do not speak either. The inside of the cottage is warm and dim. Shelves sag beneath bundles of dried fern and jars of muddy liquid. Feathers hang from the ceiling. A broom leans against a chair as if waiting for an apology. She gestures to a stool beside the hearth. You sit. She studies your face. Your ears. She grunts, then fetches a small bowl carved from ashwood. Into it she drops a pinch of salt, a twist of dried rowan bark, something white and brittle, maybe crushed bone. She pours boiling water over it, lets it steep, then stirs it with the handle of a spoon made from deer horn. All the while she hums. After a moment, she dips a piece of woven reed into the mixture and gently rests the wet tip against your ear, not inside it, just against it. You feel nothing at first, then a warmth, then a cold shiver like your ear just passed through shadow. She chants, softly, words you don't recognize, then spits twice over your shoulder. You flinch, she grins. Old habits. She leans close and sniffs your ear. Your breath catches. She says nothing, just dips the reed again and repeats the ritual 3 times, always ending with a breath and a spit. On the final pass, she sets the reed in the fire. It snaps like a twig flares bright, then disappears. Only then does she speak. It's out. You tilt your head. What is? She shrugs. Whatever it was. You feel lighter, though not in any way you can explain. She pours the rest of the tea into a clay cup. Drink it, she says. Won't clean your ear, but it'll clean the thing that called to it. You obey. It tastes like wet gravel and rosemary. Still, you drink it all. She nods, satisfied. Then almost kindly adds, don't let birds sleep near your head. And keep rosemary by the door. You nod. She hands you a bundle of herbs tied with gray twine. For your pillow, she says. If your ear hears something again that doesn't belong, burn it. You leave without paying. She never asked. The path back is quieter. The wind has calmed. No birds call. No branches creak. And you realize it's not just sound that the ears receive. It's feeling. Air, whispers, worries, and maybe just maybe things that don't belong. You sleep that night with rosemary tucked behind your ear. And for the first time in weeks, you wake with nothing itching, nothing buzzing, nothing whispering things you didn't want to hear. Only the fire crackling and your own breath, steady. The market is chaos. It smells like too many things at once: fried onions, manure, raw fleece, sour ale, rain-damp boots. There are pigs squealing, chickens escaping, and one man singing loudly about turnips no one seems to want. You move carefully through the crowd, sidestepping a girl with a basket of ferrets and a dog dressed in bells. You're not here for turnips. You're not here for ferrets. You're here because someone said a man was selling ear elixirs. Not in a shop, not in a tent. Just out of a cart painted crimson and gold with wooden ears nailed to the side, an alarming variety. Some large, some tiny, some with exaggerated curls and jewels glued to the lobes. You find it parked between a cider stall and a woman yelling about goat milk. The man wears a green-feathered hat and a cloak lined with stitched badges. He waves his arms like a windmill trapped in a storm. Come on, he cries. Hear the world like never before. Throw away your wax, and whisperings reclaim your auditory birthright. You blink. He catches your eye and grins. Ah, a fine listener, I see. He launches into his pitch without pause. Made from the flower of the moon thistle soaked in basilisk tears. You raise an eyebrow. He pivots, or more precisely, mint water. But blessed, very blessed. He hands you a tiny corked bottle filled with something pale green. It fizzes faintly. You read the label Harkeners, hallowed here all for ears, clogged by sin mud or mother-in-laws. You ask what it does. He smiles with too many teeth, brings balance, unblocks the past, removes not only wax, but regret. You pause. He leans in. 3 drops, 1 in each ear, 1 on the tongue just for luck. You buy it. You don't know why. You walk to the edge of the market behind a tanner's booth that smells of dead rivers. You uncork the bottle. It hisses, just a little. You tilt your head. 1 drop in the left ear. It tickles. 1 in the right. It burns. You frown. Then a drop on your tongue. It tastes like pepper and moss. The effect is unexpected. At first, silence, like your ears filled with cotton, then slowly a bloom. The sound of the market doesn't return, it unfolds. The flute playing 2 tenths down becomes clearer than the shouting beside you. You hear the flap of every banner, the fly that lands on your wrist, the sigh of a child falling asleep in a basket. It's not loudness, it's layers. You hear through and behind things. Even the rustle of someone's coat becomes a story you feel like you could follow. You stumble back to the cart, but the man is gone. No trace, not even footprints. Just a faint scent of mint and regret. You pocket the bottle. Later at home, you try it again. Once, only once, and hear your own heartbeat like a drum beneath a stone floor. It frightens you. You do not use it again. You wrap it in cloth and place it in a box behind a shelf. But sometimes when a sound surprises you or a voice echoes strangely, you wonder if you're still hearing with your own ears. Or his. Because in the medieval world, medicine doesn't always come with answers. Sometimes it comes in bottles with fading labels. Sometimes it speaks too softly to notice. And sometimes it works, even if it shouldn't. The pilgrim arrives at sunset. His staff is crooked, his hat is wide, and his cloak bears more dust than fabric. Around his neck, a wooden token carved with a scallop shell marks him as one who's walked far, likely from Santiago or Canterbury, or maybe just the next valley over. You find him resting on a log near the chapel wall, chewing on something that looks like bark. You offer him water. He nods and drinks deeply. Then, after a long pause, says, "You hear with the sides of your head." You blink. He taps his temple. Not the whole, the hollow, the whole hollow. You sit. You've met pilgrims before. Some mad, some holy, most a little of both. But this one seems different. Not quite tired, not quite awake, as if his ears are still tuned to something beyond the hill. He pulls a pouch from his belt. From it, he draws a twig of dried cabbage root, a piece of birch bark rolled into a spiral, a tiny cloth bag filled with ashen lavender. He sets them on a stone. 3 countries, he says. 3 cures, all useless, unless you believe. You ask which worked best. He smiles. Depends what you want to stop hearing. He picks up the cabbage root. In a village near Toulouse, they boil this and blow the steam into the ear, said to chase out lies. He lifts the birch spiral. In the mountains beyond Zurich, they use this like a screw. Twist it gently into the wax. If it squeals, there is still sin inside. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. They're mountain folk. Lastly, the ash pouch. This one's mine. Learned it from a widow with no teeth and 3 cats. You heat it on the hearth, then place it behind the ear while you sleep. What does it do? He smiles again. Makes the dreams quieter. He offers the pouch to you. You take it. Warm it by the chapel fire. Then later that night, you sleep with it nestled in the crook of your neck. At first nothing, then something. Not a dream, not a thought. Just space. Space where there used to be noise. Space where regrets used to whisper. You wake with a strange calm in your chest. and a soft ache behind your ear like something once there has moved on. The pilgrim is gone by morning. No footprints, no token, just the cabbage root and birch spiral resting neatly on the log where he sat. You take them, wrap them in a cloth, place them in your satchel like relics, not because you believe they'll heal you, but because they remind you that everyone everywhere hears things they cannot name. And everyone wants somehow to hear more clearly. In the medieval world, medicine moves on foot, from hand to hand, from village to village, from belief to belief. It's not written in books. It's passed with a whisper. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it's shared beside a chapel wall, just as the sun disappears behind the ridge and the wind forgets to blow. The court physician's chambers are always too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the fragile kind. The kind that waits to be broken. You've never been inside before, few ever are, unless they're bleeding from somewhere important. But today the steward has sent you with a sealed message, and the physician himself opens the door, takes the parchment, and says, "Wait." So you do. You stand awkwardly near a wall lined with glass bottles and tools that gleam like fish scales in moonlight. The air smells of cloves, parchment, and something metallic. He finishes reading the message, sets it down, and studies you. Do you hear better out of your left ear? You blink. I think so. He tilts his head, walks slowly toward you, and motions to a stool beneath a tall candelabrum. You'll do. You sit. He ties your hair back with surprising gentleness, then calls over a boy in an apron to fetch his auricular implements. You watch as the boy brings a polished wooden tray, holding an arrangement of terrifying elegance, a long silver scoop, a tiny hooked wire, a pair of tweezers, and something that looks like a miniature rake. The physician doesn't smile. He explains. The ancient Greeks believed that sound moved like waves. He lifts the scoop. But waves, of course, need space. He touches your ear. You have none. You try to respond, but he's already at work. First, he inspects the outer ear with a bronze mirror and murmurs something in Latin. Then he uses the rake. Not roughly, no scraping. Just a delicate combing motion collecting dust and old wax from the concha and helix. He examines each line as though divining the future. Then the wire. This, he says, is for pathways. If we map the ear correctly, he mutters, we might understand the soul's exit. You don't ask what he means. Instead, you grip the stool. The wire is cold but not sharp. He traces the narrow tunnel, gently stopping just before pain. You feel a pop, like a bubble inside your head. And then clarity, not just of sound, of balance, of breath. He places a drop of tincture rose vinegar salt on your earlobe, watches as it absorbs, then steps back, arms folded. You've been poorly balanced for years, he says. One ear too dominant, the other compensating. A recipe for false beliefs. You try to laugh. He does not. He scribbles something on a parchment and hands it to you. Follow this. It's a regimen. You read, morning steam with thyme, midday oil with clove, evening silence for 1 full hour. No singing near sheep. You blink. Is that serious? Utterly. Before you leave, he gives you a small silver spoon, says it belongs to his teacher, tells you to use it once per fortnight and never during rainstorms. You nod, half suspecting he's testing you. But when you leave his chambers, something is different. The hallway sounds sharper. You hear your own heartbeat in your throat. And you remember faintly the way he said balance, like he meant something heavier than the body. At court, rumors say the physician once tried to cure a bishop of doubt using only peppermint oil and geometry. Others say he listens to people's ears like a priest hears confessions. You don't know which is true. but when your left ear tingles at dusk and you feel just slightly taller on that side, you wonder if he really did unlock some part of you you'd forgotten was closed, and whether listening more deeply also means being heard. The widow lives at the edge of the village near the bend in the river, where the reeds grow taller than a man. Her house is small, crooked, and leans toward the water like it's listening for something. You've heard stories, of course, everyone has. They say her husband drowned in silence, that her son was born deaf but once heard thunder in a dream, that the widow keeps bees not for honey but for the buzzing which she claims carries news from the beyond. You've always thought those were just stories, but your ears have been ringing for days now. High and thin and constant. Nothing seems to help. So this evening, with the sun sliding behind the hills and your patience long gone, you go to her door and knock. She answers in silence, thin with a veil over her hair and a candle already lit in her hand. She says nothing, only steps aside and lets you in. The room smells of tallow and old mint. A fire burns low. An empty chair faces the hearth. You sit. She nods once and walks to a chest. From it, she removes a bundle wrapped in cloth. She lays it on the table, unfolds it. Inside, a small bowl of oil, a coil of thin paper, a pair of scissors, a flint, and a long cone of waxed linen. You've heard of this. Ear candling. A peasant cure. A trick, some say. A miracle, say others. She warms the oil gently over the fire, then dips her finger and rubs a tiny circle just behind your ear. It's cooler than expected, soothing. Then the cone. She places the narrow end at your ear canal, lights the top. It flares for a moment, then settles to a steady flame. You feel nothing, just the faint crackle, the sound of distant bees. She kneels beside you, not watching the flame, but watching your face. After a minute, the warmth begins. Not hot, just a slow pull, as though the flame above your head is tugging something from deep inside. Not wax, not fluid, but something older. A hum, a memory, a held breath you didn't know was waiting to be released. The sound in your head begins to shift. Not fade, but change. From ringing to wind. You close your eyes. The fire flickers. You swear you hear whispers, not words, just tones like the vowel of a song someone once sang in another room. The widow hums. Low. Steady. Like she's weaving sound. The flame burns down. She snuffs it in a dish of water, unrolls the cone, shows you the inside. Dark flecks. Twists of ash. You don't ask whether they were really in your ear or made by the candle itself. It doesn't matter. The ringing is gone. That's enough. Before you leave, she gives you the cone's ash and a pouch of muslin. Put it near your window, she says, voice dry as parchment. It will keep away the ones who speak in sleep. You nod. You don't ask what she means. At home, you place the pouch beside your window. You lie in bed. The silence is not silence. It's deeper, richer, not empty, but filled with absence. You sleep easily. No ringing, no dreams, just breath and bees, and the memory of warmth rising gently from the side of your head like a soft farewell. The chapel is cold even in summer. Its stones never forget the winter. You sit on a wooden bench near the back, your hands folded neatly, your shoulders slightly hunched, as if hiding from the draft that sneaks in beneath the door and dances along the flagstones. The priest, Father Allard, stands at the front, thin gray, not much taller than the altar itself. He rarely raises his voice. He never needs to. People listen, not because they fear him, but because when he speaks, even the wind seems to pause. This Sunday, he says nothing for a long while. He just watches the dust drift in the morning light through the chapel's stained glass window. where Saint Cecilia plays a harp with one hand pressed to her ear. Finally, he begins. Today, he says softly, we speak of listening. A few heads tilt. He continues, not hearing listening. He steps from behind the altar. His boots echo. In the Psalms, we are told to incline our ears, not simply open them, but lean them toward what is good. He touches his own ear. This is more than a hole. It is a gate, and what passes through it does not leave. He tells a story of a man who came to confession not because of what he'd done, but because of what he'd heard. A whisper, a cry, a word shouted in anger years ago that never left him. A man may forget what he's seen, Father Allard says, but a word, once it enters, it echoes. He walks the aisle slowly, says that ears must be tended like gardens, weeded, watered, sheltered from storms, protected from rot. Because what we allow inside shapes not only what we believe, but what we become. He pauses before the crucifix, says nothing for a long while, then adds, some of you clean your ears with cloth, some with oil, some with fire. A few parishioners chuckle. He doesn't. He says, but the soul is not moved by wax. It is moved by sound, and what enters must be chosen carefully. He tells them that listening is a holy act. That silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of readiness. That to listen is to invite truth. And that just as with sin, the worst things enter when we stop paying attention. After the sermon, you sit alone. Long after the others have left, you stare at the stained glass ear of Saint Cecilia, and you wonder what sounds have you let in that you never noticed. What voices have lingered too long? What words flung in passing have settled in you like seeds? You place your hand over your own ear, gently, like a blessing or a promise. That night you do not clean your ears. You do not reach for a spoon or oil or ash. You sit by the hearth and listen to the fire, to your breath, to the distant owl calling once then again. You do not chase the sounds. You let them come. And in that letting, something shifts, not loudly, but deeply. In the medieval world, the body was a gate, the ear a portcullis, and listening was prayer, not spoken upward but inward, where the soul might reply if only you were still enough to hear. There is a well behind the blacksmith's hut, stone-lined, moss-covered, sunk deep into the hillside like a forgotten thought. Children whisper that it speaks, not loudly, just sometimes, and only if you listen with your whole head. You've passed by it many times without notice, but this morning a boy's kneeling beside it. Thin, barefoot, hair uncombed, eyes too old for his years. You've seen him before. He's the baker's nephew, the one who doesn't speak. They say he was born without hearing, that his ears are perfect, but his world is silent. He sits with his face tilted toward the well, not looking in, just listening. You approach softly. You don't want to break the stillness. He does not turn, just places one finger to his lips, then touches the stones of the well with his other hand, as if asking you to feel what he hears. You kneel beside him, place your own palm to the stone. It's cool, then warm, then a vibration, not quite sound, more like rhythm. A thrum deep in the bones of the earth, like a distant chant beneath water. The boy smiles, not at you, at the well. He picks up a small clay pot beside him. Inside, crushed fennel goose fat, a twist of mint leaf. He dips 2 fingers in, then reaches toward your ear. You hesitate, then nod. He rubs the mixture gently into the soft skin behind your lobe. Not inside, just behind, where pulse meets air, where heat lingers longest. Then he does the same to his own, tilts his head, waits. You close your eyes. The well's rhythm deepens. You can almost imagine words. Almost. A syllable on the edge of recognition. The boy reaches into the well with a ladle made of bone and copper. He scoops up a bit of water, cloudy, warm from the earth, smelling faintly of metal. He pours a drop into each of your ears. Not much, just enough to feel the weight of it settle inside. Then he does the same to himself. Lies back in the grass, eyes closed, breathing even. You do the same. And then the world changes. Not drastically, not suddenly, but edges sharpen. Breaths become tides. You can feel the shape of sounds even before they form. The whisper of leaves, the tread of ants, the memory of a mother's voice years gone calling you in for supper. You do not hear it as sound. You feel it in your spine. The boy smiles. He is not hearing, but he is receiving. You spend hours there, not talking, not touching, just listening. Not with ears, with everything else, with skin, with breath, with time. Before he leaves, the boy gives you a stone, flat, round, worn, smooth by water. He taps his ear. Then your heart, then your ear again. You understand. Listening is not always through the ears. Sometimes it is through what you are willing to feel. That night, as you lie beneath your blanket, you hold the stone in your hand, and for the first time in your life, you feel what silence means. Not absence, not void, but presence so deep it cannot be heard, only kept. In the medieval world, silence was not empty. It was holy. It was waiting. It was the moment before the song begins, and the moment after the story ends. Where all that remains is the ear of the soul. The day begins before the sun, not with birdsong, not with bells, but with the slow creak of shutters and the hush of breath rising from woolen blankets. You wake with a stillness you didn't know you possessed, not silence, but a kind of inner hush, like the whole world is waiting to speak, and for once, you're ready to listen. You swing your legs from the bed, feet finding the chill of packed earth. The hearth is low, glowing with the memory of last night's flame. You stir it gently at a stick and hear the sigh of fire catching an old familiar whisper. But this morning, even that whisper seems different, more precise. Like your ears are no longer just taking in noise, they are translating it into meaning. You go about your tasks slowly. You draw water from the well. You sweep the threshold. You grind herbs for the cook. Everything you do with ear. You listen to the grain crack beneath the mortar, to the rhythm of your own boots on cobblestone, to the distant bleat of a lamb that sounds more anxious than usual. You pause, tilt your head, and know without seeing that the lamb has wandered too far from its mother. You find it moments later, just beyond the gate. You do not call. You simply guide it back hand gently on its flank, heart oddly full. At market, a man hawks clams too loudly. A woman mutters prayers over honey cakes. Children laugh in overlapping choruses. You used to find the crowd overwhelming. Today it's a symphony. Every sound has a direction, a depth. You notice that some speak without truth. Their voices wobble at the edges. Others hum unconsciously, melodies passed down generations. A blind fiddler plays by the corner, and you recognize the tune as one your grandmother once sang during storms. You stop and listen not for the notes, but for the spaces between them. And they tell you more than words ever could. Later that afternoon, you pass a boy weeping behind a barrel. You don't ask what's wrong. You sit beside him. Wait. Eventually he speaks. Not loudly, not clearly. But you hear him because you are no longer listening with your ears. You are listening with your presence. And in that space, something shifts. He quiets, leans against your side, and the two of you just breathe. Evening falls like a prayer. Candles flicker in windows. You light one of your own, not out of necessity, but reverence. For the first time in your life, you clean your ears with intention, not as routine, but as ritual. You warm oil with rosemary and mint, just as the old monk once taught you. You dip a cloth in it, wipe gently, behind the lobes, along the curve, at the base where memory clings. You whisper, only the shell, and smile. You lie in bed beneath a blanket that still carries the scent of sun and lavender. You press the flat stone from the whispering well beneath your pillow. Close your eyes, and do not try to sleep. You just listen to the creak of timbers, to the wind through thatch, to the small thud of your own heart, counting the moments of the life you've lived. You think of every person you've met on this journey, the mother who used rose oil and a willow stick, the leechcraft master who counted by blood, the candle widow who turned flame into silence, the pilgrim, the priest, the deaf boy who taught you that the ear's just one of many ways to feel. And now, you, a listener, not just of sound, but of story, of self, of the sacred hum of the world. The medieval world never truly separated medicine from meaning. They cleaned ears to make space for wisdom, to keep the soul's doors clear, to ward off what does not belong and welcome what does. You understand now, not just how they cleaned their ears, but why. Because to be truly alive, you must be willing to listen to the fire, to the rain, to the laughter and the grief, to the world, to yourself, to the silence in between. And so as sleep finally overtakes you, you carry no more questions. Just a clean path, just an open gate, just a quiet echo of the day's last sound, not a word, not a bell, not even a whisper, but a breath, your own, received and understood.